Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and everything in between. Welcome back to Geeks Watch. Today, I want to talk about the 1990s TV series Babylon 5. An image of which you will see in the 5-season box set that I have here. When I was putting Cosmos away the other day, after my review of that, I happened to notice on the shelf right above it, Babylon 5 series. So I figured why not talk about that. I debated with myself whether or not to do like just a review the series as a group as a whole, or whether to do like a really in-depth, episode by episode, long form analysis of every episode. And it's like that'd be really long. I mean, it's 5 seasons, over 20 episodes a season. If I did one a week, that would take me, like 2 years to go through. I don't think anyone's going to watch that much of my stuff. And plus other people have done it. I actually have been listening to a podcast of a couple people that I follow. One who had seen the show before, one who was watching it for the first time. Wanted to hear the reaction of someone who had never seen it before. So I've been listening to that. And other people have done, a series by series, episode by episode breakdown. So I'm just going to do like an overall review of the series. Babylon 5 is the brainchild of show creator and showrunner J. Michael Straczynski. He wrote over 80% of the episodes of this entire series, and it took its toll on the man. He worked nonstop for a very long time to get this on the air and to keep it on the air. Each season breaks down. Each season has its own title. Hold on, the box set also has. There were some Babylon 5 TV movies made, which I also have in this stupid box. So, like season 1 is Signs and Portents, which is the setup of the series. Season 2 is The Coming of Shadows. Very, very pretentious, very nerdy, self-important. Season 3, Point of No Return. Some of the show titles are very pretentious as well. Season 5, No Surrender, No Retreat. No, wait. Season 4, No Surrender, No Retreat. And season 5 is Wheel of Fire. And then we have, in the box set, the 5-disc collection of movies. There's the pilot in here, along with some like special episodes that they made for like maybe 2 movies, and then the spin-off series that only lasted a single season, which was Crusade. But we're going to talk about this stuff right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The show centers around Babylon 5, the last of the Babylon stations. The Babylon stations were built in the aftermath of the Earth-Minbari War as kind of like a way to avoid that happening again. The Earth-Minbari War was an accident or caused by some bad decisions by people on both sides. Started by Earth, but followed up by the bad decisions of the Minbari. So this is meant to be kind of like a neutral ground, a meeting place for people to talk and to hopefully avoid making the same stupid mistakes that caused the war that lost so many lives. There was, of course, the human delegation who essentially runs Babylon 5. With, the human command team, there are the Minbari, Ambassador Delenn and her attaché, Lanier. There is the Centauri, who have their ambassadors Londo Malari, his assistant Veer Koto. There's the Centauri, the Narn, who have Jakar and the Toth. There's the Vorlons, who have Ambassador Kosh. Back to the human command staff, you've got Commander Sinclair, Lieutenant Commander Susan Ivanova, Michael Garibaldi, Chief of Security, Dr. Stephen Franklin. There are some other people thrown in there. Back and forth, you get like, other people in the command structure, so like that. That's the main cast. You've also got, there are other characters that are involved. For the pilot episode, which introduces everyone and sets things up, there are some differences. the prosthetic makeup for the Minbari was changed. The pilot, it was much more heavy in the pilot. They streamlined it down for the TV series so they didn't have to go through so much prosthetic makeup. The Narn still had full facial makeup and prosthetics. Jakar's attaché Natoth, actually, the woman who portrayed him, actually, her portrayer actually left because she couldn't stand the prosthetics. There were also some personnel changes. There was a different doctor in the pilot. There are telepaths in the show. There was a different telepath in the season premiere, of the season pilot, I mean. For some reason, they couldn't come back, whatever. So they replaced them with other characters. So that's the basic premise of the show. It builds on from there. Season 1, Signs and Portents, is basically setup for what's gonna come. This was a first for American television in that JMS basically wanted this tells a complete story arc from beginning to end. Shows like Star Trek and Deep Space Nine and other sci-fi shows of the era, they're very episodic in that what happened in one episode really didn't affect what happened in the rest of the series. Like in Star Trek Next Generation, virtually nothing that happened in the episodes carried on to the future episodes. I mean, if someone got a promotion, yes, they stayed at that rank. If someone got married, they possibly stayed married. But there was very little change episode to episode. A good example of that is Worf's absent son, Alexander, who is horribly written. But anyway, they try to, they really don't make a lot of changes between episodes. But Babylon 5 was meant to tell an entire story. It was a story in 5 arcs. So you kind of do need to watch from start to finish to really appreciate what happens. So season 1, Signs and Portents, it's not just introducing us to the characters, which you would figure they would do in the pilot in the first couple episodes, but it's really setting the stage. It doesn't just set it. I didn't really realize till watching it a couple of times through how much setup is done in the first season. Stuff that doesn't pay off till seasons 3 or 4, or sometimes season 5. There's callbacks. There's a lot of foreshadowing in season 1, a ton of it, and it also does a good job of introducing it because it is serialized. Things do change from episode to episode. It really sets up a lot of the character interactions. It sets up the dynamic between the characters, between the humans and the Minbari, between the Narn and the Centauri. There's the aftermath of the Earth-Minbari War. There's some resentments there. The Narn were enslaved by the Centauri for generations, only having recently broken free in the last 50, 60 years maybe. There's a lot of resentment there. So, the two of those, Ambassador Jakar and Ambassador Malari, have a lot of tension between them. So it sets up the whole dynamic of what's to come and how the situation is right now. There's a ton of setup in season 1. Having said that, season 1 is probably one of the weaker seasons of the 5. If I'm going through the whole thing, seasons 1 and season 5 are the weakest. 2, 3, and 4 are the best. I'm going to do some mild spoilers here for season 1. I think personally one of the reasons, well, there are 2 reasons season 1 was one of the weakest. One, they spent almost their entire budget on special effects for spaceship stuff, and you can tell it in the set designs. Set designs in season 1 are not the best. There are also some bad editing choices in filming the show, and there's some of the filler episodes are very, very weak. There's filler episodes later in later seasons, but the filler episodes here in season 1 are just not very strong, and some are downright bad. There's one that I'm thinking of. I won't mention which one it is. If you watch the season, you'll figure it out. There was another thing too. The actor who portrays Commander Sinclair, I cannot remember his name off the top of my head, and I should have looked it up. He had some serious health issues going into season 1. And he didn't tell anybody except for JMS. And he told him to keep it a secret, to not let anyone know until either he died or he told people himself. And JMS kept his word. But he also told JMS that you have to write me out of the show. I'll stay for season 1. And when I first watched the show, I did think his performance was not always the best. He was not always top of his form as far as acting goes, and I think that did affect the season. His character wasn't killed off. He did come back for brief episodes later on, but they had to write him out of the show, and they brought in Bruce Boxleitner to take his place to become the new chief of the station as Captain Sinclair. So I don't really want to fault the actor too much. He did his best, but the writing was not as strong, and like I said, there were some problems. I also know that JMS had a hard time getting the show sold. It was compared unfavorably to Deep Space Nine, because Deep Space Nine actually came out before this, even though JMS was working on it independently and had no comparison. But they both took place on space stations. People thought they were just copying off the fame of Star Trek and Deep Space Nine. And to be honest, I thought the same thing. When I heard they were coming out with the show, I was like, it's just another stupid sci-fi spin-off. They're trying to, capitalize on the popularity of Star Trek. And one day I was flipping through channels, waiting for my wife to cook dinner, and I happened to catch this show on the air, and I'm like, this looks really interesting. And I think it was from season 1. Might have been season 1 or early season 2. I'm not sure, late season 1 or early season 2, whichever it was. I watched the show. It's like, wow, this is really interesting. It's very character driven, and it is. Once I was hooked. That one episode got me hooked. I won't spoil which one it was, but it is to this day one of my favorite episodes, just because of the characters involved. Speaking of characters, there is a brewing war, which is not too much of a spoiler. There's basically 2 different plot threads. One is the war, which is, the coming of shadows, point of no return. There's this big mystery going on, and what's going on in the background, which is slowly revealed to us through the course of seasons 2, 3, and 4. And a lot of it is wrapped up at the end of season 4. There are basically 2 major conflicts, one of which is the Shadow War, which is, and there are other conflicts too that Captain Sheridan has to deal with back home on Earth. But the reason I mentioned 2, 3, and 4, and the reason season 5 is considered one of the weakest, is that JMS thought they were going to cancel the show while he was doing season 4. So he hastily tried to wrap up as much of the plot threads as he could so that he could tell the story he wanted to tell. And then they renewed him for season 5. So he had already wrapped up all the major plot points that he wanted to do. Season 5 is just the leftover stuff he hadn't been able to wrap up, stuff he couldn't put in that weren't part of the main story arc. They were just minor little side details. So season 5 is kind of like a leftover, which is unfortunate. Minor spoiler, there was one actress who could not come back for season 5, and they had to write in a new character to fill in her part. And comparing the 2 stories, I've seen things from JMS's point of view and the actress's point of view, and to me it sounds like it was just a miscommunication between the 2 of them. They were doing a lot of talking between their agents, not talking directly to each other. It was a lot of stuff going on in the background. Neither one of them speaks badly of the other. Both of them wanted to come, JMS wanted the actress to come back. The actress wanted to come back. Nothing against the actress who took her place or was written to fill a similar part, whatever. I think she did fine. But, it's just one of those unfortunate circumstances. So I've talked about this for 15 minutes. Obviously, I like the show. Why do I like the show? I've given you some criticisms. Writing in season 1 is kind of weak. Writing in season 5 is kind of weak. Seasons 2, 3, and 4, writing is just really, really good. That's not to say there's no problems. JMS does not do romance well. Let's put it that way. I'll give a spoiler for that. There's some romance plots that are just not handled well. Some of it is just his attempt at comedy in certain situations. And some of it is just, some of the relationships are very, very problematic. They're not long-term relationships. Some of them are, I guess, but it's all the short-term relationships that some of the characters get involved in, side plots, things like that. But aside from those, this show has some amazingly well-written dialogue in all 5 seasons. A lot of it is with the characters Jakar, the ambassador for Narn, Ambassador Malare of the Centauri, and his aide Vir Kodo. Sorry, those three characters are the best written. There is no flaw in the writing for their characters or in the actress performances. They're flawless, in my opinion. Does not mean the characters are always good or nice or friendly or pleasant. Because of the animosity between the Centauri and the Narn, there is some definite conflict and some definite bad decisions made by the characters, bad actions taken by those characters. You know, that you're not going to root for them all the time, but the writing and acting of those 3 characters is without question some of the best I've ever seen for television. Andreas Koussalis, the actor who plays Jakar, the amount of acting he was able to do in full facial prosthetic makeup, in just these heavy layers of latex and foam, and he just evoked so much emotion and portrayed such emotion so well. You know, everything from, you know, sneering, snide cynicism to rage to frustration, you know, to hope. Just the wide gamut of emotions that he was able to portray through this heavy layers of makeup is just astounding. You know, mad respect for the actor, whose name I'm butchering and saying badly. But the same, I mean, Vir and Lando Malare don't have the heavy prosthetic makeup. They've got, you know, the wigs for the Centauri hair, but beyond that, not much makeup is done. But their performances are outstanding, and the writing for them is outstanding. There is not a single badly written word for the 3 of these characters. There are other characters who do who all the characters have amazing moments. There's no character who in the show who falls on his face, you know, writing wise or acting wise. Michael Garibaldi, who's the chief of security, has some iffy moments, also some awesome moments. Dr. Stephen Franklin, the same. He's got some really good dialogue. Personally, I think he's one of the weakest characters. Doesn't mean he's bad, just he's got some strong moments, but not as good as some of the other ones. You know, Commander Sinclair and following up with Captain Sheridan. They've all got some great stuff. Not as much for Sinclair because he's only for a season, but yeah, end of season 4 has some really good stuff for John Sheridan. Delenn has some amazing moments, some fall flat on her face moments. Same with the others. There are some side characters that they do not have a single bad moment on screen. I'm not going to spell who they are, but you know, some of them are antagonists. Some of their characters you really, really want to punch them in the face, but you love that you want to punch them in the face because they're just done so well. Character you love to hate and hate to love. And one of the things, especially, I think it's season 1. there's a moment that I found that still holds true today. I mean, there's some of JMS's politics thrown in here, but there's some stuff you can still use as current allegories, even 30 years later, that still resonate today. There's an episode with people are talking, human characters are talking about the aliens, and it's definitely a metaphor for illegal immigration here. But this was written in the 1990s, 30 years ago, and the sentiment that he evokes of some slimy people using it to further their own agenda holds true today. So some definite allegories you could make in today's political atmosphere. Just the kind of things that seem to hold true. Immigration has been an issue with this country since its inception. You know, people in Benjamin Franklin's time in Pennsylvania were complaining about German immigrants and Dutch immigrants back then. It's an ongoing thing. People complaining about the but you know, for the collection, the collection set, the pilot is part of here, and then the spin-off Crusade, which unfortunately also only lasted a single season. I think it's probably as strong as season 1, Babylon 5. Only a couple characters make from the main series make it into here, and in a way it's done in a way that makes sense. You know, it's not a space station; it's a starship, a big, you know, command level starship. And it does make a single stop. It does make a stop at Babylon 5 at one point, I think. But it's a spinoff, takes place a few years later. It's a shame it only got a single season. I think if it had been given a full 5-season treatment, like JMS wanted to, I think it could have been a great show, just as good, because there was some great writing in that. This is one of my favorite TV series of all time. I've ranted for 22 minutes about this, so obviously I love it a lot. If you can get through season 1, through the problems of season 1, I guarantee seasons 2, 3, and 4 are worth your watch. But season 1 is kind of necessary because it sets up a lot that happens. Season 5, you could give season 5 a pass. There's some great writing in it, but mostly around Jakar and Londo. Most of the rest of it, except for a couple of episodes, I could toss out the window. There's some good stuff with Michael Garibaldi. Some good stuff with Sheridan and Delenn. There's a subplot that runs through a good chunk of the season, which is completely has nothing to do with the main story of the main seasons. It's just something he threw in there. It is really bad. It is one of the things that makes season 5 so bad. I will not tell you what it is. If you watch season 5, you'll know. But yeah, I would highly recommend watching this. It is really, really good because it is the old-timey seasons back when they used to do over 20 episodes a season, and like the 8 to 10 episodes people do now these days with streaming services. But this is definitely worth the watch. If you like sci-fi TV series, the special effects are dated, the sets are badly done in season 1, and yeah, some of the writing in season 1 is kind of weak. But I would definitely recommend watching this. It is really, really, really good. That's my take. As always, thanks for watching. As always, this stuff is crap. And until next time, good hunting.